We often talk about the importance of culture in a country as a gauge of where you should run your business, where you should live, where you should invest. And that doesn't just apply to the people, that's important also, but it also applies to the politicians. While there may be no perfect politicians, far from it perhaps, there are still politicians in the world where they want you to bring your capital, they want you to invest, they want you to come and live, even with tax breaks. Not the case in countries like the United States. Legacy brands have now empowered their politicians to demonize the wealthiest people, even though they're the ones who pay the most of the taxes. Today, I'm going to share an article about Elizabeth Warren's new plan to entirely demonize what she calls tax cheats. She thinks you're a cheater just because you're wealthy. I'm going to share the article and my comments. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson, the founder of Nomad Capitalist, where we help 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs and investors, the kind of people that Elizabeth Warren thinks should be thrown off a building, or at least called a cheater. We help you legally reduce your taxes and get a second passport to be diversified, move some money overseas the right way to protect yourself from her next wealth grab, and many other things you can do too. You can learn how to go where you're treated best at nomadcapitalist.com. Here's the headline from a website called truthout.org. I love truth. If you believe it, it must be the truth. Truthout.org. I love these people like speaking truth to power as if because you're broke, you're always right. Warren proposes drastic IRS budget increase to crack down on wealthy tax cheats. Listen, sometimes power is not right. I just flew on Aeromexico recently. Believe me, I can tell you all about it. But just because you are not the one in power doesn't mean you're right. So here's the article. Senator Elizabeth Warren, Democrat of Massachusetts, unveiled legislation on Monday, this is from a couple days ago, that would drastically increase the budget for the Internal Revenue Service, IRS, to reduce tax enforcement inequities and ensure the agency goes after wealthy tax evaders. So we're already starting the article on this pretext that Elizabeth Warren frequently brings up, the idea that just because you're wealthy, you must be a tax evader. The Restoring the IRS Act of 2021, that's her new bill, I suppose, would provide the IRS with an extra $31.5 billion per year in mandatory funding, over 2.5 times higher than its 2021 appropriated budget of $11.9 million. So she's giving the IRS an extra, about $18 million. The bill would also remove the IRS's budget from the appropriations process to ensure its funding is consistent year by year. Now here's the quote. For too long, the wealthiest Americans and big corporations have been able to use lawyers, accountants, and lobbyists to avoid paying their fair share, and budget cuts have hollowed out the IRS that it doesn't have the resources to go after wealthy tax cheats, said Warren in a statement. The IRS should have more and more stable resources to do its job, and my bill would do just that. Now, I'm not here to defend. I do not have a position on all the companies that pay zero tax. Everyone I talk to is paying 40, 50, sometimes even 60%, perhaps not in the US, but 60% tax. They're paying a lot of money precisely because they're not a big corporation and they don't have lobbyists. So you're not going to hear from me, a true capitalist, encouraging lobbyists. But listen, that's the system. And what I learned a long time ago is I'm not going to change it. You're not going to change it. Maybe Elizabeth Warren will change it, but not in the way that you want. But the second issue is, are the only tax cheats wealthy? Now, it's hard to be a poor tax cheat these days. Joe Biden now has a bill that says if you as a household make less than $75,000, your federal income tax liability should be zero. As Hillary Clinton says, zero for troops, zero for schools, zero for whatever else they rattle off normally. So I guess it is hard to be a tax cheat unless you really are making good money because they keep, Republicans and Democrats both, hollowing out the tax obligations of anyone who makes any kind of normal wage in the U.S. And they just want to keep making it higher and higher and higher so that only the wealthy pay. So I guess in that case, the wealthy are the only tax cheats, but as if nobody cheats who is middle class or who's poor. Obviously, the wealthy have more money, but the very idea that she has to phrase it at all turns. Follow her on Twitter, follow her on social media, and just watch. Everything is about how the wealthy are so terrible, they're the worst, they're the devil. Now, she happens to be sitting on, they estimate, $12 million, if I remember correctly. So perhaps she's a self-loathing wealthy person, but she wants the IRS to have more resources to do their job. The article continues that Warren would also point out that it was the GOP in particular that gutted the IRS and its budget over the years. Indeed, over the last decade or so, the IRS's budget has been decreased steadily thanks to Republican efforts to slash its budget and gut its operations. I don't get into American politics anymore, but one would argue that when they were being targeted 10 years ago, perhaps they said, hey, why do we want to enforce one of these agencies that goes after people on our side of the equation, why not cut their budget? The IRS has lost tens of thousands of workers over the past decade and as a result conducts drastically fewer investigations and audits. And officials estimate that the IRS misses out on as much as $1 trillion a year in uncollected taxes. The top 1% of earners are responsible for a large portion of this by saying that the top 1% avoid taxes on up to 21% of their incomes, which could amount to as much as $5 trillion in lost revenue for the government over a decade. Now, I have seen numbers that are lower than that. You see, the beautiful thing about what I've done here at Nomad Capitalist, I've escaped this system. I'm reading this for your benefit. I'm reading this so that you know and to share my opinion because I think what is happening in the United States and what caused me to leave was I saw this coming. Politicians increasingly say because you are wealthy, you must be a tax cheat. They go together like peanut butter and jelly. And I don't have to worry so much anymore. I don't have to know all the numbers. I just know the culture. That's what we talk about. I don't need to know whether they're missing $1 trillion a year. I saw some other numbers that said from certain groups of wealthy people that if they did more enforcement and they bumped up the audit rate from like 1% to 3%, they would bring in a couple tens of billions of dollars. And I said, with a $6 trillion budget this year, what's an extra 20 or 30 or 40 billion dollars? I guess they're getting a return on investment. And listen, I'm not here to say that if you live in the United States that you should cheat on your taxes. I am, as someone once criticized me, the goody two-shoes of the offshore business. Put aside the libertarian antics for a minute. I'm pretty libertarian, but the social contract, you keep living there, that's the deal. You can leave. I left, and now my tax bill is very close to zero. You choose to live there and you want to hide under a rock and you want to hide all your money over here. They'll never find me because you're so smart. That's not how I operate. And I'm not going to suggest that's the way you operate. But what I am saying is, now perhaps is the time to divorce yourself of a country where one of the key politicians constantly comes out and calls you a cheater. I can tell you this, part of why I didn't want to live in the US anymore and deal with the tax madness, in addition to the fact that I just didn't like the country that much and just didn't really want to live there, even if the taxes were zero, was, there's this fear when you live in a Western country that other people don't have. You go to other countries, people are kind of like, I pay what I pay and good luck. Enforcement in Western countries is already much better than in most of the world. I'm not saying that should be used as the benchmark. What I am saying is I never cheated on my taxes and I became I think a successful person, perhaps more successful now because I don't have to worry about the taxes. But, this idea that they go together is absolutely ridiculous. Everyone who's rich is a tax cheat in her mind. And so do you want to live in a country where that is increasingly the sentiment? She gets airtime because people agree with her. She gets airtime because her position is becoming more prevalent. Her party won. She has, more people in power in her wing who are moving in that direction. And she's not even the most extreme of all of them from what I can tell. So I take a different perspective. I had the fortune of growing up around some successful people, being able to meet certain people who were on boards or who had experience starting businesses, and I got a lot of financial education as a kid. And what I learned along the way was that successful people worked very hard. Generally, I found them to be very ethical. And I was almost in a bubble of sorts that when I got out into the real world, it was shocking to me in a sense, starting out in business, that people would ever be late for a meeting, people would ever cancel on you, people would ever not pay a bill, because the world that I lived in growing up in this successful suburban reality where I got to meet some pretty high-level people was people did what they said. And now that I have the opportunity to not only be, I think, successful myself, but to work with a lot of successful people from 7 to 10 figures, is they have a pretty high standard of ethics generally. And so this idea that is propagated by politicians in the legacy brand West, isn't it so convenient that when they want to take more money from you, when they want to raise your taxes, when they've run up a big bill that now they can't pay, when they weren't prepared for COVID, when they haven't been prepared for almost anything, and they've been running massive deficits, riding up the debt, they want to raise more money, and suddenly, it's like they come out attacking you. They come out attacking the people that they know they need to raise taxes on because, the way they've mismanaged the country and the currency, people's wages have been stagnant for so long. So of course the rich are the only ones they can target because no one else will vote for tax increases on themselves. That's been the culture of the US for pretty much as long as I've been alive. At least in some European countries, people vote to raise taxes on everyone. Not in the United States. And so the politicians have become such demagogues now because they know they need to do that to get your money. Is that the kind of society that you want to live in, where you've got to be tagged as a cheat? And just look at what's happened in the US in the last year, and other countries as well in the West. Look at some of the violence. Look at the riots. Look at all the chaos. Look at the stuff. They take Jeff Bezos and they drive signs around Washington with, insulting him. They go to his house. They make, offensive, statues and sculptures, and they threaten him basically. You think that's not going to come to more people? You think that as people get more and more frustrated and this agenda makes its way more and more into the society's conscious, that this is not going to result in more problems for people who are wealthy? We talked recently about how some of the super wealthy are moving to Singapore. Why? It's their safe haven. Well, they believe the country is well managed, which is more than you can say for most Western countries. They believe their money is safe there. And you know what? A lot of other people are successful there at a much higher rate than in Western countries. And so success is tolerated, success is welcomed, not by every single person, but there's not an entire culture of hating the rich. There is in the United States. Politicians like Elizabeth Warren play into it. Now you're not just a greedy pig. Now you are a cheat. And so let the IRS enforce, let people do what they're going to do. And if you want to leave, you have your chance. Go where you're treated best. I guess I'm one of the evil guys who's helping people foil Elizabeth Warren's plans to tax you. Because, as Gavin Newsom said, where are you going to go? Well, you come to Nomad Capitalist. You'll hear lots of places you can go to get away from the madness. But you have to make the decision. And quite frankly, I think it becomes easier by the day when more and more people are labeling you a cheater because you put in more effort, you worked harder, and you did what it takes to be successful. How can Nomad Capitalist help you? 4 ways. Number 1, subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to make sure you get our new video every day. Number 2, get a copy of Nomad Capitalist, the book. You'll learn a lot of my personal experiences over a dozen years of studying this stuff, as well as exactly some of the strategies that you can use to build your Nomad Capitalist plan. Number 3, if you're not sure where to start, but you want to come and learn from my team and I, you want to come and mingle with like-minded people, learn more about our live conference, Nomad Capitalist Live. It's coming up soon. And number 4, if you want some help right now because you've got a burning issue, you need something solved, you want to lower your taxes, get a second passport, or build the Nomad Capitalist lifestyle of your dreams, go to nomadcapitalist.com and click on Become a Client.